It's 2 o'clock, so we'll call to order the commission meeting Thursday, May 2nd, 2019. I'll lead us in the invocation. I'll ask Commissioner Duncan to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Will you please rise? Dear Heavenly Father, we just thank you for this day, and Father, on this National Day of Prayer, we just are so thankful that we're in a free country where we can pray to our God. We pray for our national leaders, our state leaders, and our local leaders. And Father, we thank you for the community we live in and all of the citizens. We just ask you give us guidance as we make plans for the future and as we seek to provide the services that these citizens in this community need. Help us to bring glory to you in everything we say and do, and just help us to be alert to the Holy Spirit in each one of our lives. It's in Jesus' blessed name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have one gentleman that wants to make a public comment, Mr. Calvin Way. Mr. Way, if you'd come to the podium, please.
Yes, my name is Calvin Way, and I happen to be the president of the Tri-Area Association, which is out in the Brookman, Buck Swamp, and Fancy Bluff area quite a number of years. My reason for being to this meeting this afternoon is that we're getting so many questions for, I imagine, a couple of years. So ever since the fire hydrant, the tower was built out there in that area, ever since then. So you know how long that's been. The Buck Swamp area, the original Buck Swamp area, which you go down to CC Road, and at the end of the CC Road, you make a right. That is the old Buck Swamp. And we have residents in that area. We have church there, been there for years. I happen to be an heir of the Buck Swamp descendants, and I'm quite familiar with that area from a young lad. And these people live out there now are still asking this question: why that all of the services and fire hydrants turn left and go back all of the new development out in that way towards 17, and they don't have a fire hydrant out that way at all. I mean, to me, I don't know what happened, but every time I attend some meeting, a church, or whatever have you, they always tapping me on the shoulder, when are we going to get some fire hydrants out this way? So I understand that we all know how important it is to have fire hydrants, access to fire hydrants, because for insurance purposes, for safety purposes, and so forth. And these people out there is just as important as everybody else. They're residents. Some of the same people out there right now is the one who actually named the Buck Swamp descendants years ago when I was a lad, before I was born, I guess. So the only thing I'm asking is, would you give this your immediate attention and do whatever it takes so we can be able to answer this question and be able to have some fire hydrants out in that area? That's why I'm here. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you very much for your comments, and we'll look into it.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to make sure, Ms. Free at the back got your information?
Is that?
Did Ms. Free, the lady that was at the back, did she get your name and phone number and?
Yes, yeah, sure. Have the information in it. I gave her the information. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move to committee updates. We did not have a facilities committee meeting. A finance committee?
We have not had a finance committee meeting since the last one.
Do we have any other committee meetings?
They have human resources.
We'll move to the approval. Item 1 is the minutes from April 18, 2019 regular meeting.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we accept the minutes as provided to us for the meeting of April 18th.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor indicate by raising your right hand. I want to ask that we grant approval to excuse Commissioner Harvey from the meeting today. He's up in Washington at the Washington Fly-In. Can we have a motion to?
Second.
All in favor? Thank you. Second is the minutes from April 18, 2019 executive session.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor indicate by raising your right hand. Motion carries. Third item is intergovernmental agreement, CPOM sewer rehabilitation. Mr. Dominic.
Afternoon, Commissioners. You have before you a 2005 intergovernmental agreement related to the CPOM sewer line rehabilitation. As you may recall, the approved SPLOST 5 projects for Glynn County included various water and sewer capital outlay projects, including projects known as sewer line rehabilitation. JWSC has identified a qualifying project within the CPOM's development. The enclosed intergovernmental agreement is required by law to be entered into in order for the county to be able to provide SPLOST 5 funds to the JWSC, and so that the JWSC may manage the project. Through the intergovernmental agreement, the county and JWSC agree that the project is to be funded in whole or in part using the remaining $561,795 of SPLOST 5 proceeds allocated and reserved by the county specifically for sewer line rehabilitation. It shall be used for improvements in the CPOM's development in order to increase capacity and improve sewer service on the island. JWSC agrees to promptly perform and complete the project and understands that it is solely responsible for the completion of the same. JWSC agrees to promptly proceed with the acquisition, construction, and equipping of the project, and understands and agrees that it must fund and complete the project, and that the project cannot be abandoned even if the actual cost of the project exceeds the amount of SPLOST proceeds received from the county.
So if it did significantly exceed it, could we do 90% of it and just only do what we had funding for? I mean, it's, you know, you could do 90% of the linear feet instead of all of them.
I don't see the problem with that, no, sir.
Where is this work supposed to be done in CPOMs?
It's mostly 8-inch VCP and the Harrogate area to 2011 basin and the 2012 basin, which is the rest of CPOM basically back from Harrogate to the clubhouse back there. And then there's some in the 2032 basin in CPOM's west. Most of that ductile.
Have we televised all that line?
We haven't televised all of it. We have a good portion of it televised. We don't have all of 2032 televised. We have the other ones.
Are we going to be doing the smoke testing pretty soon in that area?
That is correct.
So we have no estimate of what the total cost may be.
We can spend the money.
Yeah, but I'm questioning if this is the best place to spend the money, though.
Glynn County's been wanting to pave in CPOMs for a few years now, and they have held off on their paving project because of repeated sinkholes caused by failures in lines.
Okay.
My concern wasn't that that it wouldn't be enough. It was mine that the project will grossly exceed the amount of revenue, and that's why I was asking if we could do a proportion of it. So I mean, if it comes in at 3 times this, can we do a third of it? Or to just allocate us, or do all of it?
And then force us to do it all.
When would this work be started?
Let's put it out for bid, so we get bid specs together, and I mean, the best case scenario, we're looking in fall before it gets started.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that the JWSC enter into a spliced 2005 intergovernmental agreement for the CPOM sewer line rehabilitation.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any questions? My only comment is I wish it had been brought before the Facilities Committee before we presented this at this meeting. I don't think the Facilities Committee has looked at this. Any other questions? All in favor indicate by raising your right hand. Motion carries. Move to the discussion items, meter replacement, RFP update.
Mr. Chairman, the meter replacement program, in your booklets here or your binders, you have a summary. The first page of the summary gives you a brief overview. We've talked about it quite a bit, and we understand that there's a lot of the deep details. If anyone wants the deeper details, doesn't remember all the information that we've shared in the past, the third document in this little packet has the deeper details. But basically, the gist of it is that we've got AMR throughout the system. The telemetry batteries are failing, so we're having to go out and do replacement of meters in a lot of areas at a fairly rapid rate. And we wanted to systematically replace these things, since most of those assets, or if not all those assets, have outlived their predicted life. Put together the issues we'll be looking at. We're going to be issuing an RFP. There is on the second page, the schedule of execution of the RFP and the final execution of the project, or our draft schedule. You know, we'll have to work through that as details shake out. But it is a quite involved process. We're going to be looking at issues of technology, ability to finance, the price, the customer service capabilities of the software or the AMI system, and overall look at what the issues are that are traditionally looked at in RFPs for meter replacement projects. The last issue, and as we go through and do the RFP, receive the responses, do the evaluations, and do a short list, the shortlisted vendors will be given an opportunity to do a pilot test, which will evaluate their technology in detail for 6 months, find out what their capabilities are, does it meet all of our needs, are there some technological issues that we're concerned about. Once the 6-month trial is done, we'll make a recommendation based on the initial scoring of their responses and the outcomes from the pilot study. The schedule is a fairly long one, but that's the nature of this kind of a process.
Okay. I have a couple of comments.
Yes, sir.
I haven't found it yet, but are they guaranteeing a particular, are we requesting a guarantee of a particular lifespan?
No, sir, we're asking, basically, that different ones have a different lifespans. The more predominant, I guess what you would call warranty is a 10-year warranty. At least one of the vendors we've talked to has a prorated for an additional 10 years if the batteries failed before the end of the 20-year period. You know, there'll be a proration of a refund on those batteries or those meters. But there's no standard out there, and I don't think we can reach out and say we want X number of years, because the technologies are limited to what you can do.
Well, I kind of don't really agree with you on that. I think we ought to put in there a minimum life for the battery and the head, and that if it doesn't achieve their minimum life, that they replace it at their cost, both the battery and the head. And the reason why I say that is probably one of the most successful programs I had. Raytheon gave us a 12-year life on a radio that basically was that unless we dropped it out of an airplane, they replaced the radio for any failure. And I think that we need to encourage that. Raytheon did it not because we requested it, but because they wanted to win the contract. And I think that if we have language in our RFP, which basically says that the contractor must guarantee, and I don't care if you put a lifespan in there or whether the contractor's allowed to declare what his lifespan is, but that would be, if we do it that way, then that lifespan has to be part of the evaluation points. But I think that we need to force the technology people to start living up to their claims through replacement at no cost to us.
And they will up to a certain point. I mean, as I said, most of them will warranty 10 years. It's when you start pushing out beyond a certain
Well,
point.
is 10 years, do they replace it at no cost?
Yeah, if something happens between
Well, I think that
year
needs
0
to
and
be
10
in there, and it needs to be a specification.
for some number greater, maybe we could get together offline and work through what would be a reasonable approach on that, because there's some possibility some of them could reach out a little further, but we may be paying a little more to achieve those.
Well, that would be an evaluation point.
Yeah, that's right.
I agree
Because-
that it should be an evaluation point. I mean, I definitely think it should be an evaluation point.
How many proposals are we planning on having a pilot test run?
It's unspecified. We haven't nailed that down to how many we're going to shortlist to. I guess a lot of that's going to depend on the outcome of the responses and, the variability, and do certain ones seem to jump out. And I don't want to say it's going to be 2 and then wind up there's 3 or 4 that are real close, and we need to.
How many meters do we have to manually read now?
Roughly 2,000.
And that's growing by about 100 a month, 150.
Yes, sir, and we were up until recently able to replace those, but since we hold the orders, we have seen that number continue to rise.
What's that?
The failure rate is increasing because the existing meters have reached beyond their life expectancy.
The batteries on the existing meters, not the
Yes, sir.
meters.
So they're, well,
We can still manually read them.
correct.
But we're losing about, did I understand correctly, 100, 150 a day, a month?
A month, yes.
Not a day.
Seems like we're stretching this out a pretty good distance. How many meters we got out right now?
30,000. We have approximately 28,000 that are the older technology, and then roughly 2,000 those are the newer style.
How much would it cost to replace the batteries on those 2,000 meters?
They're not field serviceable,
Okay.
which is typical in the industry. You're not going to find one where you can pop the battery out and replace it.
You have to replace the battery and the register.
The transmitter, the transceiver,
Yeah.
in most cases, yes, sir, it's potted. There's an epoxy that's holding it all together.
And just to comment, our plan is to essentially upgrade the technology, replace the metering technology we currently have with a vendor. One of the things I want us to keep in mind that, we will very likely have to do some manual reads in territories that a vendor can't provide the communications backhaul of information. So I just want to be sure that we all understand that that is practical at some point, that as we continue to expand the system into some areas, may not have the density enough to have the kind of communication system available back then. So I just wanted my peers to understand that this is not the end-all solution necessarily. It is perhaps the 90-95%, Jimmy, what we might expect, and then we might have some.
For some of the vendors, that's exactly right. But some of the technologies, they do, if you're willing to put the collectors up for a little extra money, you'll cover even those remote customers.
Right.
So
we'll have to make that decision
Yes, sir.
as the evaluation occurs, but there practically could be a part of the solution that we still have a manual read, simply because financially it makes the best decision.
Yep. Yes, sir.
Well, when you design your test criteria, that would be one of the things that you would put in your test, is to put part of them in remote locations and see what the receivability is.
Yeah, I think that's more just a case of physics. What we're more concerned about was not so much whether they technologically could work, but what would be the difficulties of managing it, connecting it into our, what are the
Well, I
day-to-day
understand
issues?
what you first looked at, but
add
what I'm saying is, when you start your testing, you need to include remoteness.
Gotcha. We'll add that in.
Most of these meter suppliers, vendors will be at the Georgia Rural Water this next week. So the staff can go visit their booths and tell them about this too. When do you think we'll have an RFP out?
Sir?
When we will have the RFP out?
We're looking at getting it out here in the next month and a half, sometime in June.
Okay. Any other questions? Item 2, Whitlock Avenue sewer blockage collapse update.
All right. Mr. Chairman, I'm just going to briefly go through this. Back on the 28th, it came to our attention through a local contractor that there was a sinkhole out on Whitlock. Staff responded immediately, went out and did a immediate first responder look and mobilized basically all the SP&M resources, the construction crews, the vac trucks, even the pump station folks, to help us coordinate and get that repair going. They made the excavation. We found problems with the line. The initial solution was to replace the line with, or the bad portions with some C900 30-inch PVC pipe. We ordered the pipe. We had a bypass pump come in from Godwin Pumps. We started to do the assembly to bypass that segment of line so that we could do the work without having flows go through it. And we did the well points to get it working. As we worked, of course, there were some issues that we talked about along the way. A couple of pieces of pipe that didn't quite cooperate with us. And then as we went a little further to clean the lines in preparation for ultimately slip lining it, which we thought would be the best solution for the line itself, we found that there was some ductile iron under the railroad tracks. And the ductile iron portion under the railroad tracks was very, very corroded. A lot of holes, some fairly substantial holes with mud and water pouring in through them. As we moved along, about the time we start working on slip lining the whole thing, after we got the plastic pipe in place, another sinkhole appeared at the other one manhole upstream. Staff commenced to repair that, and were able to do a local spot repair and did some inspection to see if there was any other issues. Didn't find anything. Along about this time, we find 2 sinkholes over B&W Road, same line, just further up. That was right there where 4036 goes force main to Gravity. Apparently, that line had seen some of the worst of the damage. Fortunately, it was very shallow right there, so it was fairly quick, easy response and repair. The thing I guess I'd like to point out before Jay hits the video is that the team of folks we had out there working on it did a fantastic job. There were some long hours, some very difficult situations. There was a lot of unknown obstacles that showed up that they had to overcome, and they all seemed to respond with the options that we needed in a timely fashion, put it together and made a repair that could have been a disaster, and they made it work. Very commendable. Jay, would you?
Let's take a good look at what it's like to work in the trenches with JWC staff by reviewing the process of making an emergency repair to the gravity sewer main on Whitlock Street in Brunswick. On Thursday, April 18, 2019, Joe Stone, a local utility contractor, noticed a sinkhole on Whitlock as he traveled to his office. Joe contacted Ray Giuliano, our systems monitoring coordinator, who went immediately to assess the situation. At that point, he and his crew realized this to be the 30-inch reinforced concrete pipe trunk line serving pumping station 4036. This RCP main was likely installed in the late 1950s. Following road closure and public notification, Systems Pumping and Maintenance Division staff mobilized construction crews, vacuum truck crews, and lift station crews to the scene. Kirk Young, SP&M superintendent, secured a track hoe and operator from paving contractor Georgia Asphalt and began the excavation of the sinkhole, anticipating the line had failed, causing the sinkhole. Service interruption was avoided by quickly setting up rotation with vacuum trucks. It was determined that the crown or top of the line had collapsed and the entire 540 feet of pipe would require replacement. This particular line segment is the one line segment that the Bloodhound camera inspection crews could not get through to inspect while under contract with us last year. Based on the condition of the line upstream and downstream, it was decided that the best action would be to replace the failed portions with C900 PVC, which was ordered and delivered the next day. Godwin Pumps was contacted to provide bypass pumps and the materials for the suction and discharge lines needed to bypass this line segment so work could be facilitated. The 12-inch discharge line was completed by about 9:30 a.m. Friday morning, April 19th. SP&M staff installed well points along the length of the construction area at that time. With well points in place, the south portion of the line segment was exposed and dirt removed from the opening. The line was carefully jetted and cleaned with the jet vac truck. This exposed the ductile iron pipe portion under the one railroad crossing. Video was done on this portion, and the ductile iron line portion was found to be severely corroded and had significant holes where the water and mud were entering the line. Staff commenced to focusing on the northern line portion and to excavating the northern opening. Staff completed this and then set the replacement spool of PVC pipe in place. The spigot end of the PVC pipe was inserted into the RCP pipe bell of the southern line portion. The northern portion of line was carefully jetted and cleaned. As the staff prepared to tie the PVC to the northern section, the line was seen to be drooping. The line was further exposed so that the line could be pulled up to align with the southern portion. The spool of RCP, being adjusted, crumbled and had to be removed. Once exposed, the next spool of line in the northern portion remained properly aligned. The PVC replacement was extended to this location and wrapped to provide a temporary joint until the entire line could undergo cured-in-place pipe slip line rehab. The bypass pump had to be moved one manhole upstream to facilitate entry into the upstream manhole on the line segment to get slip lined. Luckily, a 30-inch CIPP bag destined for Tampa in 2 weeks was available and was secured for the emergency. The line was prepped and delivered on Tuesday. Bionomics responded with the sock and they lined the pipe, which took almost 3 times longer than expected due to conditions inside the line. While this was going on, a second sinkhole appeared next to a manhole where the bypass pump was operating. A void was found at the downstream invert where an earthen bridge had formed. The vibration from the bypass pump possibly caused the bridge of dirt to collapse. The excavation of this sinkhole commenced while the slip lining downstream was in progress. Once the slip line was secured downstream, staff finished excavating the sinkhole at the upstream manhole. Staff carefully replaced this RCP with PVC and closed the joint with cement. This was completed late Saturday, April 27th. Additional inspections to the northern invert on this manhole are planned to determine if immediate issues are probable. Meanwhile, on Wednesday, April 24th, another sinkhole appeared on B&W Grade Road within a few feet of the transition manhole for pumping station 4036. This is where the force main discharges to 30-inch gravity. This hole was secured and the street was closed. By the next morning, a second sinkhole was discovered next to the first one on B&W Grade Road. Staff made temporary repairs by fastening cutouts from a PVC spool until a more permanent rehab can be done. The intersection of Lambert and B&W Grade Road was reopened to traffic. As of Tuesday, April 30th, plans were made to reopen Whitlock by the end of the day with rock bedding. Final paving will then be scheduled for the soonest point possible.
Where those other sinkholes occurred, had we previously televised them? Didn't
That was part of the Bloodhound work.
did it show defects in the pipe?
Do we,
Okay.
sorry, do we have knowledge of how many locations within the county we may have a similar situation?
That's a loaded question.
Well, I would like to see all the ones that we think. I mean, we've known about this one for a while, correct?
This is part of the permanent rehab part of the SPOS project. So, we have a database of TV footage that we can go and sort by worst to first. There's a 1 to 5 scale, 5 being what is deemed catastrophic, it doesn't necessarily mean that things falling in, but it's deemed catastrophic, and floor is nearly there. And we have quite a bit of pipe savings there for us.
Do we
We'll
know
say,
where,
I'm sorry.
do we know where all our concrete pipe is?
All that we've identified, we don't, I mean, there could be some out there that we've never, ran in line, but
Well, it seems like to me that we're always, anytime we open the ground up, we find something we don't expect.
There's a lot of undocumented issues out there. I wanted to say, by the way, we met with our engineers on the SPLOST 2 and 3 yesterday to talk to them about what they could do to expedite the first portion of the job, which is to set up specs to rehab those lines. They can shorten it a little bit, but it still looks like the total job, I'm being told, worst case, we ought to be able to get all that line that's part of the SPLOST 2 project that needs rehabbing, completed by late January, worst case.
Are we doing odor control at 4036? Is the pump,
as part of the SPOS project, it's not, we aren't currently doing it now. We have ran some tests there, but we aren't currently doing that now.
Do we have a cost of what the Whitlock repair? Do we have an estimate on what that's?
It's about $200,000, almost on the button. I
this
can
cost
provide a
right here?
Sir?
This project right here? This
Yes, sir.
one?
I can provide you a detail if you
And
want to
that
look.
includes labor, with labor and everything.
Oh, yeah, no overtime.
It's probably 3 to 350.
With overtime.
I guess my thoughts are, I mean, there's no doubt we've got a lot of pipes that need replacing. There's no doubt that we've got a lot of things that we don't know, conditions we don't know of. But are we really any worse than other communities in the state and in the country? And if that's so, then that's one thing. But I just want to make sure that our message is not the sky's falling, the sky's falling, the sky's falling. And not saying anybody said that, when I would, like to believe, or my perception at least is that most communities in the country deal with some of the same issues that we deal with, especially older communities, which this is an old community.
Everybody's got problems.
Right, and I think that's exactly what I'm trying to convey.
When did we find out that the line was blocked? When was the survey done that we found it was blocked, and when was it televised? Was that a couple of years ago?
Last year. That was the blowdown for everything last year.
Okay.
They couldn't get the camera through because of hanging gaskets and some debris, but the line was not completely blocked. They just couldn't get a camera through. And we didn't want to jet it without bypass there because we had concerns of condition if we started pressurizing that pipe.
Is it possible that when we jetted the lines, that's what caused the sinkholes at B&W grade?
We weren't jetting up there at the time.
It didn't
Now,
go
the
that far
previous
with
work
the-
that we did to televise it, it could have thinned it a little bit, but it was in pretty bad shape. I'm not going to put the blame necessarily on the.
Okay. Just a question, curiosity.
In fact, when we had shut the area down for a little bit, we had everything in place for bypass pumping, and we were just going with back cons. It did back up into that area. It all stayed in the pipe, but it backed up into that area, and as that pipe gets full, you get pressure on the outside of the pipe, and then when it drains, it kind of contracts back down. And if there's any holes there, which obviously there were, the dirt likes to go with it at that point.
Our design engineer, they're gonna be determining the inverts of all the manholes to make sure we got the correct slope in it. I want to commend our staff on this project. I mean, it was pretty involved, and they jumped to it real good, and did not create any spills or anything like that, so that was a good job.
I'd also like to say that I appreciate the updates that you kept giving us through this project so that, we were up to speed as much as could be through it. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Any other questions, comments? Item 3 is proposals for Academy Creek and Dunbar Creek upgrades.
Yes, sir. In everyone's binder, just a very brief update. We got the responses back from 5 engineering firms day before yesterday. Selection team is reviewing the proposals right now. We're going to do initial scoring and shooting to have that all completed by May 10. Then we'll conduct interviews with those 5 firms on the 13th and 14th. And from there, make a final recommendation. So it's moving.
So we should have something to talk about at the facilities meeting, 15th.
Very, very well could.
Any questions? Executive Director's update?
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, we've got a few things going on. First off, I wanted to make sure I didn't let the day go by without making sure everyone acknowledges and congratulated yourself on becoming a member of the Georgia Tech Hall of Fame. Very much congratulations there. I'm sure it's a lot goes into all the things that have to be done to make the accomplishments to achieve that. Next items, solids handling or solids hauling roll-off truck that we've been talking about to reduce our cost in hauling. The RFP is going out tomorrow. It's going to be a month before we get our responses back, and it'll be a few months before we can purchase or before a order will be filled. Inventory analysis. One of the things we've been working on for several months now is getting a better handle on our inventories for the various areas. And what we're finding is that, basically, we went through is a lot of this is a result of last year's audit report, and in prep of this year's audit, we were self-auditing approximately 300 of our top dollar inventory items. We're finding variances, so there's going to be some issues that we're going to have to deal with by the end of the year. And as we get that done, we'll be moving back to talk to the commission about that. Critical equipment inventory and PM creation for our wastewater treatment plants. We've essentially completed the first phase of action on that, working with Mr. Wayne Morgan. We were able to get all the critical critical equipment of those 3 plants identified. And of the ones that were there, the most critical PMs that were required, he identified all the PMs, and we've input all the 3s, 4s, and 5s in terms of priority, 5s being the most needed, most critical equipment. Got all that into the system, so we're moving forward with that. Our next step is to get the PMs, the 1 and 2 PMs in, and probably won't work on that until the new budget year when we've got some monies in our technical services to pursue that. Excuse me. Smoke testing began yesterday. We're already achieving dividends. We started on East Beach and found a lot of stuff. So we're going to be, I think that's going to be a real good outcome for us in terms of locating I&I issues that we can take control of and fix pretty quickly. We even found one cross connection between stormwater and our line that we know that's going to be huge.
Have we determined if we have many issues where the owner has responsibility?
I'm going to say, I don't know exactly, but I would say all, but probably almost all, except for the one that was a stormwater cross connection into our stuff, could be. Andrew, from looking at the pictures, what would you say the split is between private and public as far as those smoke tests?
90-10 which way?
I mean,
Private.
of the total, and the total being?
You're looking at, I think that was 30 or 40 defects they found yesterday. The vast majority.
Oh, so it's a very small
The
percentage.
vast majority of that 90 is 90% damaged cleanout caps. We're not, they didn't get a lot of smoking laterals, it's just damaged cleanout caps that needs to be, dug down on and fixed, relatively low dollar stuff.
9 or 10 is ours or
90%.
Oh,
of the
90.
problem
I'm sorry.
is private.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you right. Anyway, so it's a good situation, and they're out there today just doing the area just west of East Beach. The CVS space next door, we've got we've gotten in touch with their real estate people. They are going to be out by the end of the lease at the end of May. They'll send us a formal termination of the lease and hand us the keys about that time. They've still got a few materials in there they need to get out, but at that point, we'll, excuse me, be pursuing getting we've had some interest already in renting it, so maybe we can chase that and get that executed. Just FYI, the SPLOS list, we had originally talked about, we've got it on the facilities meeting here on the 15th to talk about the SPLOS list that we put together and the more detailed look at the list. Weren't able to get much more from the county or the city in terms of the details of their projects, but we're working through that. We're going to make some guesstimates based on some suggestions we've gotten to figure out at least where they're going to be and what do we have that might be in those areas, and give some approximate ideas of what we need, I guess placeholders if nothing else. Then we've got our list, and we'll have that in priority to present some details, cost, and some maps of the pieces that we see as important. The last item that I've got on here today is there is for our emergency preparedness, there's a tabletop drill going to be held on May 22nd at the EOC. Staff's probably going to have 4 people there attending to help us get ready for whatever might be coming. But just wanted everybody to be aware we are in the active process, and we will be reaching out to you, Chairman Stevens, to go ahead and set up our initial emergency preparedness committee meeting. We've got an outline of the things we need to do. Now's a good time to be scheduling that meeting. And that's my wrap up.
How many people came to our smoke test town hall?
5.
5?
Yeah.
And that should be finished by the end of the month.
Hopefully by the 15th if the weather holds out.
Dennis, for any of those town halls in the future, do you mind adding that to our calendars just so informationally we'll, like the town halls, just?
To the outlook calendars?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
The only update I have is just to recommend that any commissioners go to the Georgia Rural Water Association conference Tuesday and Wednesday. You'll see the vendors, you'll see some technical sessions and things like that, so you can see what goes on in the state and other areas too. And some of the sessions will let you know some of the problems that other systems have. It'd be very, very good for you to spend some time there if any of you have time to do so. And I'm sure we'll have a lot of staff there. How many people we have from the staff?
Pretty much everybody that's got a license will be there.
Yeah. Okay, we need to adjourn now for executive session. It's going to be for litigation and personnel.
I'll make a motion, we adjourn for executive session.
Second.
All in favor? Adjourn. Have a motion to come out of executive session.
I move to come out of executive session, Mr. Chairman.
So moved.
All in favor indicate by raising your right hand. Have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Motion carries. Meeting's adjourned.